The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi everybody, welcome to today's webinar, during which we are going to look at overdues and the various ways that you can tackle them. So I know this is something lots of schools have kind of been trying to get a handle on since everything that's happened over the past couple of years. So do not fear if your current overdues look monumental. You are not alone. If you wanted to just drop a quick hello into the question box, just so I can make sure that you're hearing me okay, that would be fab. Hello to anybody that I spoke to at the SLA conference over the weekend, and those of you that were lucky enough to attend. It was really lovely to sort of see some of our customers in person, and thanks to those of you that came over to say hello. Yes, and I hope you're all doing okay. So just a really quick bit of housekeeping first. Just let me move over to my next slide. So my name is Sarah Billany. I'm Customer Community Manager here in the UK. These are my contact details. If you guys have any technical difficulties or get called away, or you have students arrive unexpectedly, please don't panic. You'll all be sent a recording of this webinar in about 3 days' time, which just gives me time to kind of convert the recording and that kind of thing. It'll also be available on the Padlet, the link for which and the QR code is just on the screen now. You will need that password to access it, and there's also some Padlets for all the other webinars available there as well. And it'll also be on the community portal under the Learn tab, which I know I say this every time, but it's a great place to just check out, because in addition to all the UK webinars under there, there's all the ones that this team in Australia do as well, and they obviously tackle things from a slightly different angle, so you're welcome to watch those too. There are some documents and an attendance certificate that can be downloaded from the GoToWebinar dashboard. Please help yourself to these. And hello to everybody that's saying hello in the question box. So as you've seen, this is there for you to kind of be able to communicate with me during the session. I don't always get around to answering questions during the session because I tend to do this on my own. But please do ask anything that you need to, and if I'm not able to answer during the session, I will always follow it up afterwards. So don't be afraid of just popping any questions in there. Right, so I am going to look at some of the different areas on Oliver today that can be helpful when thinking about overdue books. I'm going to start by looking at setting up a kind of an official overdue reminder, as this will help us, allow us to look at a few kind of important areas all in one go. So I'll just open up my Oliver system there. Now, obviously, you can access your overdues just from the overview screen here and this little icon here. Any notices that either you have set up already or any of your predecessors have set up already will be listed on this screen. The list will tell you the name of the overdue notice, so that's this bit here, how it's set up to be delivered, so that's this bit here, the number of loans captured by that notice, and how often it's set to run. The icons at the end of each row basically allow you to either edit the notice, so that's what this little pencil's for, take a look at those people and resources that are included in the notice, or run it. So that button there would run the notice. That's particularly important if your notice is set to irregular run on request. Those will only run when you press that button there. Now, before we look at setting a notice up, it's worth remembering that if you want to email students or parents, that kind of thing, with these notices, then you need to have the relevant email on your student's borrower record. So I'll just show you that now. I'll just go and look at my borrower record. So I'm going to go to circulation and borrowers, and I'm just going to do a little search for myself, open up my account, and then edit it. So you can see that we've got an email address and an alternative email address field on here. There is also a family email address field. Now that doesn't actually appear on the borrower records by default, but it is something that you can page edit onto a record if you want to. Now, I'm not sure how many of you are aware of the page editing, so I'm just going to take a little meander detour to that and show you it because I think it is quite a helpful tool. So with the page editing, you would go to management, and no, you wouldn't. You would go to system and pages just here, and you need to turn it on. So you need to turn the page editing on. So you would just press turn on. And then you navigate to a page that you want to change. Now in this case, I'm wanting to edit the layout of a borrower record. So I could open up any student borrower record at this point. It wouldn't matter whose student borrower record it was. And I would go and I would press edit. So I'd be in the edit mode on the screen and then scroll right to the bottom of the page, and you'll now see the option to change the layout of the screen. And when you click on that, it shows you the current used fields and then the unused fields. So you can see that family email is one of those unused fields. So I can move it over. I could kind of move it up closer to where the other email address fields are. There, and then save. And then if I come out of here and I save this borrower record and then go back in, you'll see that that family email address field is now available in there as well. And that page edit function is available to you for any page. So if you want to change the layout of a page, that's how you would do it. Now with email addresses and having them on your borrower records, what's on there, I guess, is going to very much depend whether you have sort of automatic borrower loading. So if you have automatic borrower loading, what's going into each of those fields will depend on what email address is put in what field on your MIS and what boxes you've got ticked in WAND. Or you might be doing a manual import if you don't have the automatic borrower loading, in which case you can import obviously whichever email address you want into whichever field using a CSV file. Okay, so those are some of the fields that you can populate and need to be populated if you want to email any of these email addresses when sending out overdues. Okay, so I'll just come out of there. Another quick area to be aware of are your role classes. So you've got circulation and role classes just here. And this is where all of your role class information is kept. Now, if you want to email group overdues, and by that on Oliver, it means overdue notices that are going to be sent to the form tutor with a list of overdue books for the kids in their class, you have to have an email address in here. So you would have to go and edit each of your role classes and pop an email address in there. And that will then allow you to send out those group overdue notices, which I'll show you how to set up shortly. So that's just kind of a bit of the sort of pre-setup and things to think about if you are wanting to kind of email overdue notices. So we'll head back to the overdue area now. And I'm going to talk you through setting up a new overdue notice and explain what the fields within the notice are for. So to create a new notice, you would just press this Create New Overdue button just here. And then you would give the notice a name. Now, this is purely for your information and to remind you what the notice is for. So I'm going to create a really general notice that can be emailed to students. So I'm just going to call this student email overdue here and press add. And then that opens up your overdue details template. And obviously it's what you put on here that's going to determine kind of who and what for this notice will go out for. So the first question you need to answer is how many days overdue does the book need to be captured by this notice? So if you're making something really general, you might put something like this in, and that's going to capture all of the resources that are between 1 and 999 days overdue. If you're going through the process of setting up a first reminder, second reminder, final reminder, that kind of thing, you might be popping in something like that for your first reminder, something like that for your second reminder, and something like that for your final reminder. So you might be setting up stage notices. You can also put in negative numbers. So this can be particularly useful if you're thinking about your year 11s or year 13s, student teachers, anybody who might be coming up to leaving sometime soon. So you can pop in kind of negative numbers. So this would send a reminder out to anybody who's got a book due within the next week, so to speak. But obviously you could have a bigger range of time there if you wanted to. But for this notice, I'm just going to set up something really general here. You do have this due between dates option as well, which obviously allows you to target books that are due between certain dates. And again, that might be helpful if, for example, in your lending rules, you've maybe set up a resource loan category for textbooks that have all been issued to a specific date, something like that, and you're just wanting to target the books that are due on that particular day or within that particular week. So that certainly has a time and a place to be helpful. But I think for the most part, you're probably going to just be using this days overdue option. The next area to think about is how do you want this overdue to be delivered? Are you wanting to print it off or are you wanting to email it? The print or email option, that will email it to everybody that has an email address on their borrower record, and it will allow you to print it off for those that don't. So that's what that option is there. But to be able to kind of demonstrate the email functionality for you, I'm going to choose email today. The sender's email, now that essentially defaults to the branch email address of whoever's logged in. If there isn't an email address in the branch field, it will default to whatever's in parameter 1004. If you don't have anything in there, it will remain blank and it will let you sort of manually type something in. So that's what that option is for there. Another thing I should highlight here actually, while we're just mentioning parameters, and I'll pop these up on the screen later, is parameter 3404. So that's parameter 3404, determines if closed dates are to be included in this range here, or whether the overdue days just relate to those days that are open. It is set to no by default, that parameter. Like I say, I'll pop that on the screen again slightly later. Now, the recipient's email address, so who is this email going to? As you can see, these relate to those fields we looked at earlier on the borrower record. So it's at this point you're choosing which of those fields this email is going to go to. You can select all of them or two of them or just one of them. So you can choose whichever you want, but obviously whichever one you select or ones you select, that is who this overdue notice would go to. The frequency determines whether the overdue will be run daily as part of the housekeeping or regular scheduled. That also runs automatically with the housekeeping, but according to a schedule that you set. So you might run it every week on a Tuesday and a Thursday, for example, starting next week. And you can set it to end on a certain day or just to kind of continuously go. Or you can choose irregular run on request. With that one, that will only run when you press that little send button we saw earlier on that overview screen. So nothing would happen automatically there. That would just kind of only go when you say so, basically. The repeat option determines how many times the overdue loan will be reported on. So for example, if you decide to run your notices automatically on a daily basis, if you set the notice to one notice only, borrowers with an overdue book within the date range selected will only get one notice no matter how many times you run it. Whereas if you set it to multiple, if you set the repeat option to multiple here, they'll get a notice every time you run the overdue. So what you choose here very much depends on how frequently you're running your overdues, because obviously most people are sending these because they do want the students to be reminded. So if you're running it to a schedule maybe once a week or once every half term, or you're running it on an irregular basis, you probably would want multiple notices. I think the time that only sending them one reminder comes in handy is if you are running it every day and it's perhaps going to parents or teachers, that kind of thing, and they might not be particularly grateful for a daily reminder. But obviously that is entirely up to you guys, the combination that you set there. I would say the combination I come across most regularly is either regular scheduled or irregular and set to multiple notices. Now, this option here, the email form, this is where you decide what you want your notice to look like. Now, if I had chosen print up here instead, you'll see I still get a drop-down menu, but these are for print notices. So I'll just flip it back to email. So yeah, so you've got your drop down menu here of all the different email options that you can send out. Now the document that's attached to the GoToWebinar panel called Overdue Notice Report Formats shows you what each of these documents look like. So that can be a really handy document to just save to your desktop, have sitting around just to refer to. So I'm just going to choose first notice email here. Now those that say group at the start, and this applies to the print notices as well, those are the ones that when you select those, it will just be the form tutors that are emailed. So if it doesn't say group at the start, you can be sure that that first notice email is going to go to any student that has a book between 1 and 999 days overdue, and it will go to whatever email address is in this field here. Whereas if I chose a group notice and I scroll back up, can you see how this area is now greyed out? That's because it's going to ignore that now, and it's looking to the email addresses that you've got in that role class area, because it's just going to email the form tutors and summarise the overdue loans for that their class, basically. not to be confused with the new group functionality that's appeared in patch 55. So for any of you that have noticed that we now have a new groups feature, this reference to group here is actually referring to role classes. Okay. There is a use SMS option. Now that's fairly limited in how it can be used. So they are registration controlled. So your account must be set up for that. And you must also be set up with an SMS provider who offer an SMS email interface. So just thought I'd mention that there. Now this area here, the header, the message and the footer, this final section basically allows you to customize areas of your email. This is totally optional. All of these templates have wording on them, which that overdue notice report format document will tell you what it is. But if you want to personalize it in some way, this is where you can do that. Okay, and that overdue notice report formats will show you where your text will sit on the message when you're whether you put something in the header, the message or the footer. So like I say, it's a really, really handy document to have. But yeah, this can be where you can personalize it. So if you're wanting the students to return books to a particular place, you want to sign off with your own name, you've got some particular instructions. Maybe this is a notice targeted just for your year 11s, so you want to write something specific to them on there. And this is essentially where you could do all that. Okay, so once you've got your information on here sorted, you would press save here. And this gives you an overview of what you've just done, essentially. Now, at the moment, this notice is going to go to any borrower that has a book between 1 and 999 days overdue. If you want to target a particular group of borrowers, this is where you would do that. So you can go in and you can either target particular borrowers or particular resources. Now, I'm just going to go in and edit the borrowers area. And somebody's asked a question about the new group functionality and whether you'll be able to choose between group and role classes for these notices in the future. I don't know in terms of the drop-down menu whether there'll be a kind of development there, but I can certainly put that forward. What you can do at the minute is you can select group from this bit here. So if you wanted to target a particular group that you'd set up, you could do that, but this would send it to the individual student rather than it say emailing English sets a English teacher, if you see what I mean. So in here, you can make selections. So I'm just going to select the borrower type of student because I don't want to email staff with this notice. But it might be that, for example, you want to target just year 11s, or you maybe want to target a particular branch, that kind of thing. And once you've done that, once you've made your selections, you would just press save. Somebody else has just asked a good question about the time of the overdues. Now, I don't know again if you've noticed with the latest patch that a new feature has come out where you can schedule the time of scheduled reports. That doesn't extend to overdue notices. So this is really something to bear in mind if you chose to run your notices every day, for example, so these regular daily ones. The overdue notices go out with the housekeeping, and your housekeeping is usually set to run sometime between kind of midnight and 1 in the morning. It's at that time because obviously that's the best time to kind of, process all the information that's needed. It does mean that the overdues would go out at that time. So just something to bear in mind if you are doing it, running it every day, and it's going to parents and things like that. You can't really change the time that that's run, because it would mean changing the time that your housekeeping runs to, you know, a time during the day, and we wouldn't really recommend that. Someone also has just asked a question about clearing the overdue information that you've got set in here. Now, again, with the latest patch, so if I just go in and edit this borrow selection, there is now a clear all button sitting at the bottom of the screen here. So if you want to clear your selections in here, you can just press clear all, and you'll be able to kind of start afresh with your borrow selections in there. Now I've just gone back to my Overdues screen here, and you can see that that notice I've created is just sitting there. So to run that notice, because it's irregular run on request, I would need to just press that button there, and that would run that notice. If I wanted to edit the form itself, I could press the edit button and it would take me back into that form. If I want to go back to that overview screen where I made my borrower selection, you press the little number at the front and that takes you back there. And you will notice as well that you've also got a test email option. So if you want to test it and send it to yourself before you actually start running it, you are able to do that as well. Okay, so that is how you set up an overdue notice. There are some other handy tips in relation to this. By default, Oliver will just send plain text emails. By that I mean, let me just show you on my slide here. It will, by default, it'll send plain text emails like this. Now, you can turn on HTML emails, which will look like this, which I'll show you shortly how to do that. But by default, it sends these plain text ones. So we'll just head back to Oliver here. Those plain text emails from that drop-down menu that we saw earlier, they all live under reporting and email and SMS reports here. So this is your list of all of those plain text emails that you're choosing from. I'm only mentioning this because occasionally we do get asked about editing those. Now, obviously you have the option to edit the header, the message and the footer on these emails anyway, but sometimes people want to do something slightly more involved, in which case you can come and find the message in here. So for example, you could click on it and you can then duplicate it, give it a new name. It's set up so it's all in, it's got all the kind of HTML language in here, but you wouldn't edit any of the page breaks or any of the actual HTML itself. But if you wanted to edit the actual text, you could go in and do that. So you might want to change the word in there, and then you could save it. And then that saved duplicated report would appear on your list of reports to choose from when you're setting up an overdue notice. Now, turning HTML emails on, so the ones that look like more like this, you do that using parameter 1603. You can also add a header image to your HTML emails in parameter 1604. Just to mention with that, now my HTML email is showing with cover images there. The only reason they're showing is because they have been uploaded as thumbnails. If you're using the kind of standard cover image, those images are not stored in Oliver, so they won't display like that. So to have the cover images displayed, you actually have to physically upload a thumbnail. But with the HTML email, obviously you get the option to have hyperlinks in there, and the text looks a little bit nicer as well. So, but again, it's totally personal choice there as what you decide to do. The HTML emails, if you turn that on, you edit those under reporting and HTML email reports. And once you've got that turned on, the editing for your HTML emails is just a little bit more straightforward. So again, if I just go in and let's edit the first notice email here, I could just edit this and you can see you can add. So that's what it looks like when the cover image isn't uploaded as a thumbnail, but you can choose to add more fields to the email, and you can edit the text here, and you can choose to add more display fields for the resource as well, and whether you're choosing like total cost, total items, total overdue charges, that kind of thing. So you can make some changes to the report there. What I do want to mention here is any changes that you make to this introductory text and this summary text would be overwritten by something. If you've got something in the header, footer and message field on your overdue template, that would overwrite anything you write in here. So say on your overdue notice, you've set up your template and you've chosen from the drop down menu the first notice email, and then you go and pop something in these boxes, what's on the overdue template itself would overwrite this. So you need to make a decision which box you're going to use if you are using HTML emails. So those are your formal overdue notices, and a few extra kind of bit of tips on kind of plain text versus HTML emails. However, it might be that you're not wanting to run formal overdue notices. You might want to just be accessing some overdue information in other ways, print reports off, or just search for certain overdue items. So I'm now just going to give you a quick run through of some of the other ways that you can access your overdue information. First off, there's your things to do panel just here. The number here where it tells you your loan's overdue, that is clickable. So you can go to the overdue books here and generate reports from here as well. You can also use the drop down menu on the left to either bulk extend, bulk renew, or bulk return those loans from here. The bulk return option was really popular once we started kind of coming out the other side of COVID, and people wanted to basically bulk return lots of overdues that they didn't think they were getting back. When you choose the bulk return option, you do also get the option to mark those items as missing at the same time if you wanted to. The report options from here. So if you were wanting to generate a report on all of these overdues, you would press that, and then you've got various different report options. So things like your group overdue notices. So if you're wanting to print off notices for all your form tutors from here, or full list of borrower loans with cost, that kind of thing, or individual notices, you can do all that from this screen as well. Moving on from that, you've also got the browse button in your circulation desk. So if I just head to my circulation desk here and open that up, you've got the browse button here. And again, that can be really helpful. So it will allow you to browse by year group, by role class, by department, by group now as well. And you just click on a particular class and can very quickly see, who's got overdue books, who perhaps has a birthday this week, who's got current loans, that kind of thing. And you can also print a role class overdue or individual notices from here. So that's a really nice place to come if you've got that particular class in the library and you very quickly want to get an overview of what's going on with them and give them some overdue information to take away. In your circulation desk, you've also got various little icons on the screen here. So when you hover over these, you can see that you can print new learns, print overdue learns, print selected learns. Now, because I've not got a borrow on the screen, they're not actually clickable at the moment, but they would be if I had some borrow information on the screen. Now, that can be misleading because although it says print, if you have an email address on a borrower record, it will also give you the option to email that information from here as well. Sometimes, if it's not kind of be functioning in your preferred way, so if you're wanting to print but it's just emailing, or it's, you know, you're wanting to email but it's just printing, sometimes that can be related to how you've got your user privileges set up. It's really hard to generalize here, but you can always contact support and we'll guide you through the setup for this. But essentially it relates to your user privileges. So every borrower has to have a user role, and the list of user roles that you have available on the system will be under system and user roles here. And each of those user roles, so for example, OPAC only, will be made up of different user privileges. Now, my user role is administrator, and the administrator user role is just made up of the user privilege administration. So if I then click on my user privileges, I can go to the administration user privilege and I can edit it. And then I would want to look under circulation here and circulation desk, and these are the user privileges that impact on those printing options. Let me just find the specific ones in here. Here we are. So can you see here, you've got allow the user to print, and then if you click on that to expand, allows the user to print or email new borrower loans. So you want that one ticked. And you'll see that there is also an option to email by default without the option to print. So if you're finding that's what's happening and you want the option to print, it's likely that that's ticked. So those are the privileges that impact on these kind of things, and you've got that for kind of new new borrower loans, overdue borrower loans, and selected borrower loans. So you've got all those different options there. While I'm in user privileges, it's worth mentioning that there's no factory reset for user privileges. So we would recommend that you either take some advice when you're editing these and only tick the ones that you're sure of. And with Circulation Desk, a common mistake is that people will come here and they'll see access to Circulation Desk is unticked and think, oh, why is it unticked? I want access to it. So they'll go ahead and tick it. Now, the reason that's unticked is that pretty much kind of every other function in Circulation Desk should be unticked because these are all automatic overrides. So if you go ahead and tick everything in Circulation Desk, you'll stop getting those alert messages that pop up with certain things when you're kind of, you'll automatically kind of just start overriding all your lending rules and that kind of thing without getting any warning messages first. So that's why that often is unticked there. That's supposed to be the case. So don't panic if you come here and see that's unticked. Anyway, sorry guys, that's just a little detour there, a bit more information about user privileges for you. But essentially they can impact on what happens when you click on these buttons. And if you're unsure and you don't want to go ahead and start ticking things without checking with us, drop me an email or drop support an email and we'll take a look for you. Now, final area before we finish the session today, when you're looking at overdues, are circulation and learns just here. This is somewhere you can come and search for any books that are currently on Learn. You also have a Learn History option there, and that obviously, this is the place where you could come for search for historical learns, but current learns, you want to be in your Learns tab here. This is a really useful area for reporting on, and if you're not running formal overdue notices or you just want to run up a list of specific learns or overdues. Now, you might notice that I've got quite a lot of search fields available to me on here. If you come here and you don't have all of these options, I would really recommend adding them. And you do that using that page edit functionality that I showed you earlier. So you would go and turn your page editing on. You'll get that option to change the layout of this screen, and then you can move over more options into the used column here. It just gives you kind of more options for searching, really, without having to build big search strings. So if you wanted to look, for example, for books for year 7 that were due, all overdue books, you might put something like everything that was due back before yesterday for year 7, and you can go ahead and do a search there. And as you can see, you could even be more specific. You could target a specific collection, a particular class, or branch, that kind of thing. So you would run your search and it would bring those books up on the screen. And from here, you've got your generate report functionality as normal, or you've got your bulk extend, bulk renew, bulk return. So this can be quite handy for just targeting perhaps year 11s when they've left and you're coming to the point where you've chased the overdues and you know they're not coming back. So you maybe want to return them and mark them as missing. So you can move forward with that and delete the borrowers. So that is all the information I wanted to share with you today. I'm just going to pop up this slide I've got about parameters. This will be on the Padlet as well, guys, available to you, but I'll just pop it on the screen here in case you want to look at it in the recording. Thank you, as always, for taking the time to come along in person. I really appreciate it. I am currently taking suggestions for our next round of webinars, so it's really hard to believe, but this is our last kind of webinar of this academic year. So the next one will be October. I've got a couple of things in mind, like I'm hoping to look at LearnPath in more detail. We've had a lot of new features lately, things like the group functionality, that kind of thing. So I want to have a kind of new features type webinar as well. But if there's anything you guys are keen to look at, just pop it in the questions box, or again, just send me an email and I'll be really happy to add that for the schedule for next year. So like I say, I'm just working on that at the moment. Have a brilliant rest of the summer term. Thank you again for coming, and yeah, just get in touch if you need anything. I'll leave the question box open for a few more minutes just in case any of you guys have got anything that you want to pop in there, and then I will close the webinar down probably at about 20 past 10.